Hello everyone, it's the Head from C3 Panel. This is a podcast about graphic novels and comic books, and today I'm continuing with my series of interviews with creators. My guest today is Maddy Hope. She is an illustrator animator currently based in London. Her work predominantly focuses on character design, bold colours and drawing. She has a playful, quirky style and enjoys working in a variety of styles from hand-drawn to digital. For the last year, she has been freelancing with various design studios, creating illustrations and animations for brands such as Headspace, Netflix, Venus Gillette, Coinbase, Camden Hells, Ann Summers, and the V&A Museum. First of all, Maddy, thank you for agreeing to come on and speak to me.
No worries, they're great to be here.
How are you doing? You okay?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm freelancing at the moment with Sage, which is an accounting software, so it's not the most exciting project at the moment, but yeah, all good here. You?
I am doing well. The reason why I'm interviewing comic books artists and animators is I'm quite interested in how creative people go around doing their job. And so my first question, Klee, is what does an animator do?
I guess you just make illustrations move, whether it's drawing every frame painstakingly by hand or on your tablet, or whether it's moving keyframes in After Effects. It's just kind of creating movement within pictures, I suppose.
How did you start down the route of wanting to become an animator? Because I'm interested in how different creatives choose the field they've gone on to work in. Why do comic book writers want to write comic books? Why do comic book artists draw comics? Why do animators want to animate? Where did that journey start for you?
Well, I studied illustration at the University of Brighton, and I think, to be honest, I kind of, towards the end of my third year, I was like, I want to make money out of this, and I'm worried that just illustration alone won't do that. And then we had some like little workshops, and we had one in animation, and I thought, I'll learn to animate, and then I can get maybe more money and get more work doing animation. I've always had really like a real interest in it. It always looked impossible to me. I never understood how people did it, so it's always a fascination. So I turned my whole focus to that. Was determined to make that my job.
That's quite interesting. One of my previous guests, John Peter Mirren, he pretty much had a similar journey.
Really?
He's a South African illustrator animator, and what he would ideally like to do is just do illustrations, but in order to pay the bills he has to do animation as well for commercial clients. It's like really highly in demand at the moment,
Yeah.
apparently. What was it about that kind of particular segment while he's kind of learning animation that made you believe, all right, this is something that I go in and do? Was it the work itself, or was it something about the way that it was taught?
I think it was like mainly the animators that I got shown initially. One of the first animators that made me go wow was I don't know if you heard of Jonathan Hodgson.
No, I haven't. No.
He's quite old school. He does everything frame by frame, like loads of texture, just really beautiful. I don't know how familiar you are with animators, because obviously I know this is mainly based about comics.
I'm not familiar with animators at all, which is kind of another reason why I've decided to interview you, because I think they're kind of sort of related fields, but not really. So I'm just trying to see where the intersection is as
I
well.
mean, like, I suppose it kind of intersects in the way of, like, I love cartoons. I've always loved cartoons. Obviously, just grown up watching SpongeBob, Simpsons, Adventure Time, all of that. I've always loved cartoons and animation.
This is kind of a very general question, but what is your process in terms of when you get a brief and then going out trying to create something out of it? Do you start off with a script, or is it more like a general premise or idea? How does that generally tend to work?
I always start with like a sketchbook. I'll just start scribbling something. Can be really basic. You can literally start as almost a stickman, and then I keep adding to it basically until it becomes better, and then making it digital, using Illustrator, making things into vectors, making it all clean, and then gradually building up from there. But sometimes with a brief, I'll literally just be given a couple of words. For instance, because I'm doing some freelance work for Sage at the moment, they'll give me like a really bland financial term, and they'll be like, you have to turn that into an illustration. So I suppose I do some research first, just like look around for some inspiration, and then just start sketching, and then picking which sketch is good enough to kind of try and develop, really.
One of the things that I got from talking to John was sometimes you're hired as a freelancer to kind of bring some creativity into the message that the company's trying to put forward. Has there been any times where you've had an idea they've considered too wild?
I mean, I am still very much at the beginning of my
Yeah.
career, I'd say. So I've been doing a lot of cleanup work, which is cleaning up other animators' animations, making them smooth and color. I've done like some freelance illustration work, but most recently I did some work for Ann Summers. And to be honest, like I was surprised they picked me because I mean, I don't, if you've seen my work, it's quite cutesy, I'd say probably. So if anything, they were more like draw loads of dildos, do this, and I was like, oh, okay. Um, I don't know really.
Yeah.
I don't think I've had that yet, but hoping to soon.
How did you come to develop that style? Because, you know, kind of as you mentioned in your bio, there's a lot of bold colors, like the geometry in your character designs seem to be kind of like lots of clear lines. You can kind of see the clear geometry of it. It's very unfussy and kind of hits you in the face straight away. So how did you go about developing that style?
I think I was just I'm really influenced by like the animators that I really love. You haven't heard them, but you should look into them. There's Caitlin McCarthy, Anna Ginsberg, Parallel Teeth. They're actually all under the same. I've done a lot of work. I've worked with them directly. That's kind of helped, I suppose, influence me because I've seen the way they work, and I think like, oh, I'll try work in that way and use the certain like same brushes maybe they use. Yeah, so I'm quite easily influenced, I suppose, by others' work. And I do love comics as well, to be fair. Like I love like humor in my work. I love Peanuts. It's my favourite.
Did you get a chance to go to the Peanuts
I
exhibition?
did, I
Oh,
actually
God, it's a
did.
couple of years
Yeah, I
ago.
loved it.
It's fascinating, wasn't it? Kind of seeing how Charles Schutz's like creative journey in terms of how like the style of the characters
Yeah.
changed over time. And I think for me, the most touching piece in the exhibition was the letters from like children and parents as well. So I think that was quite touching
Yeah, it's just
as
so
well.
iconic and the style is so brilliant. Yeah, no, it was so good. I loved that. I didn't want to leave.
Yeah, yeah, it was a brilliant exhibition. I need to start going to exhibitions
Yeah,
again
definitely.
now everything's opened up. I've spoken to a few people in this series now. One of the reasons that some of them haven't gone into animation is that they get quite frustrated with kind of drawing the same thing over and over again, especially if they're doing hand drawn illustration. Is that something that you encounter in terms of when you're doing your animation? Are you quite happy go through the process of trying to get the animation going
I
smoothly
mean, that is
as well?
I'm actually a really impatient person, which is ironic because you have to be so patient and it is a really long, slow, and painful process actually. But I think what gets me through I just love the end result. Like it's just so satisfying to see it all going to especially if it's like a looped animation, just watching it kind of flow. For me it's kind of worth it for the end result, no matter how painful the process is. Like you're hopefully going to end up with something really beautiful to watch. So that's what kind of helps me anyway.
For those of my listeners who aren't aware of how long an animation takes typically to do, so if we was talking, I've seen some of the stuff that you've got on your Instagram, they're less than 10 seconds long.
Mhm.
Some of them. How long would something like that typically take you to kind of animate?
Days really, but I'd say like probably like a I don't know like a 3 5 second loop would probably take, depending on how much detail I go into. If I had full color and everything, probably like at least 3 4 days, and that's working fast.
Yeah, and you briefly mentioned about your process. You start off with a sketchbook. You did mention how you choose to animate kind of depends on the project, but kind of digitally, what tools are you using?
Yeah, generally, yeah, I use all the Adobe stuff a lot. So Photoshop, Illustrator, After Effects are kind of my main go-tos really. I have like done stuff by hand and scanned it all in. But yeah, generally I work digitally. So yeah, Photoshop's my main go-to because you can add textures and add more like life to like illustrations and animations, I think.
So I have done a little bit of animation myself. I used to volunteer at Omnibus Theatre,
Mm.
and they had a children's art club that did a stop motion animation. They hadn't taken enough photos to make it smooth, so I had to go into it wasn't Photoshop. I had to use GIMP
Oh.
to kind of like add extra frames into it, and it was just kind of like, yeah, just photo manipulation tools are quite powerful, but it is also kind of quite time
Mm.
consuming as well to make sure everything is smooth. Generally, in terms of like filmmaking, I'm also quite interested in the intersection between sound and the moving image. How does that kind of work for you? Do you start off with an idea of the soundscape that you're going to be working with, or does that kind of come much later on?
Honestly, I haven't worked much with sound yet, actually. I mainly do kind of gifts without sound, but I do really want to look more into sound. But like a lot of animators I know, they hire like a sound designer. And I've been contacted by lots of sound designers like, oh, let me know if you're making a film or something and I'll do the sound designs. It's never occurred to me too much to think about sound myself. I've always kind of thought of outsourcing that, actually.
You're just going back to your process, really. Everyone I've spoken to has got like a different place where they work. So some people work in a studio, some people work in a coffee shop, some people one person I spoke to takes their iPad out into park and kind of scribbles on their iPad there. How do you kind of generally go about doing your work? Do you have kind of like a set routine and that sort of stuff?
When I'm doing freelance work, I generally like I've got a little desk in my bedroom, which is where I've been working currently in throughout lockdown and everything. I used to have I worked full time and I used to work in a studio before that. Ideally, I'd love to get a studio space again to work in, but as I mainly work digitally, I don't need like a big setup to be fair. So I can kind of work anywhere, but generally, I do seem to work in my room. I love taking a sketchbook or like my iPad to the park as well. I like scribbling elsewhere, like watching people and having a doodle, really.
It's still really important to create things just because you enjoy creating stuff rather than to a brief. Do you still find time to do that? And kind of how important is that to you, just to kind of maybe do like a weird doodle or a quick animation, just to, maybe flex those muscles that might not be being satisfied with more commercial work?
Yeah, I definitely I try and sketch every day. It's been really hard with lockdown, I think, 'cause my motivation just dropped so much to like draw, create anything. So I did take a long break from it. Yeah, generally I do try because like yeah, drawing and making work it is like a muscle. Like if you don't do it often, you will lose it and like you're not as good. I do try and just do like a stupid little sketch almost every day if I can, like even if it's not very good, even if it's just really quick or takes 5 seconds, like I think it's really important to kind of just keep making something.
I was having a look on your Instagram, and I was just wondering if there would be any further adventures of Froggy Boy Father. Are you going to be working on any
I
any more
love
of those,
frogs.
or
I don't know, I just think frogs are great. I feel like frogs are really in now. I'm seeing them everywhere at the moment in artwork. And yes, definitely. I want to definitely continue making. I'd love to make a little film about that frog. I think he's great. Yes, more frog work coming soon for sure.
do Froggy Boy and Froggy Boy's son have names yet, or is that something that
I think
you're
that's
going to
something
work
more.
on
I
a
think
little
I will
bit down the line?
develop them for sure. But yeah, not something they have yet. Not don't have any names or anything so far.
So with freelancers, usually most of the freelancers I've spoken to, they're working for multiple clients at the same time. So I was just wondering how, I don't know if that's the case with you at the moment, but how do you manage your time to kind of make sure that you're meeting different briefs and
Well, with animation, like with illustration, you kind of juggle a couple of jobs at the same time. Whereas with animation, it's kind of like someone will hire you for like 4 weeks, 2 months, 6 months. So because things take so much longer. So at the moment, it's kind of worked out quite well for me. I've managed to kind of go seamlessly from one job into the other, so I haven't had to juggle too much. But when I've worked in studios for like animation companies, you have to juggle everything at the same time, and it is a struggle. I like focusing on one thing at a time, ideally.
like with animation, correct me if I'm wrong. I certainly see it as a really collaborative art form. So I was just wondering, is that something that you enjoy about working as an animator, or if it was within your kind of like power, would you all kind of like do it all by
No, I
yourself?
really love the collaborative aspect of it. I mean, obviously, during all this lockdown, I did I worked on the new Headspace series on Netflix. I don't know if you've seen any of that. Yeah, I got to work with some of my favorite animation directors, like, and it was all over Zoom, and there was like 20 of us all like over Zoom because it's so much work, and it was really nice. Like, I really looked forward to those calls, and like before this, I've worked with Strange Beast Productions, which is a studio based in London, and I used to we before all lockdown and everything, we used to work in the studio together, which I really enjoyed. So I think it is really like because I think if you're doing animation by yourself all the time, you do just go a bit crazy because it just takes so long and it is a bit like you do have to be a bit crazy to do it, to be honest. So I think it's really nice to be around like-minded people making like working towards the same goal, like making something together for sure.
How does that work? Do you so in terms of working in a team like that, do you get kind of told, right, we need to do this sequence by this time, and then does someone come and have a look at it, and then you have to do revisions? Is that kind of
Yeah,
the way
that's
that it
exactly how it
works
works. Yeah, pretty much.
when you're like working like that collaboratively? How much of yourself are you kind of able to put into the animations? Is it because when you're working on a solo project, you can kind of really put your heart and
Mm.
soul into it, but I imagine when you're working more collaboratively, you need to work to someone's more kind of someone else's
Yeah,
vision.
exactly. Yeah, because yeah, directors have like I've worked under quite a few directors and they have a very particular way of how they want things to look. So sometimes I'll do something like, oh no, you need to do this, you need to change that brush, oh that's too much, and like you have to change things, but you don't almost even see it yourself because they've got like this vision that's so particular of exactly what they want. Like I've had to redo something for Headspace, I think like 20 times almost because he apparently I just wasn't getting the lighting right on this weird spine that's spinning in one of the episodes. I had to like keep doing it until he was like saw it, but I didn't see what he was looking for. Like it's funny, people just have their own ideas of how exactly things should look in their heads, I guess, and it's just working with a director is kind of trying to get their vision out just like how they could, I guess.
Suppose kind of having to study that style guide and the series bibles and stuff like that, and trying to get it. Have you? So I'm already coming out with my recommendations for what my listener, well, what my guests should be listening to. There's a really fantastic
Mm.
graphic novel called Pyongyang. It's by Guy Delisle. He's a French animator, and it's about his time working in North Korea. So he was kind of like an animation supervisor. I think in North Korea, there's a lot of well, there's kind of big animation studios that do kind of a lot of the animating for kind of Western series. So he had to kind of spend a lot of time in Pyongyang and kind of like making, correcting the styles and kind of the mistakes that the North Korean animators were working on at the time. So whenever I think about animators working under a studio system, in my head, this kind of like linked to like North Korea. So I'm sure it's not quite as bad as that, but when you're working in
Yeah, like obviously, yeah, when
working for
it's for
Netflix and
Netflix,
stuff
like
like
it's got to
that.
be very like particular because it's all very highbrow. But that sounds really interesting, though. I have to check that out.
You mentioned before some of your favorite cartoons growing up. So as a kid, which cartoons did you love watching?
Yeah, like The Simpsons. Like I love early Simpsons. What other cartoons as a kid? I obviously like loved all the Disney stuff. I mean, like I've never stopped watching cartoons now. Like so, like I regularly watch like Adventure Time, Bob's Burgers. I recently watched Over the Garden Wall, which was really great.
Yeah, I'm really big fan of Bob's Burgers. The Simpsons is quite interesting how their animation style has changed over the
Yeah.
years as the technology has changed. There's something about the way the episodes are colored now, in terms of like, I think there's something about the digital coloring that it almost seems like too bright. Where you look at the older episodes, there's kind of like not washed out, but
Mm.
the colors
Yeah,
aren't
I
as
kind of, as a
vibrant.
rule, like don't watch past like season 10 for me. Like I think it kind of stays good in that like early
Yeah,
stage. I don't know, I'm a bit of a cartoon snob though, I guess.
well, there's nothing wrong with being snobbish about which. That would be actually a good question to ask my guests. When did
That would be
which series did
interesting.
they stop watching The Simpsons at? Because I think I probably stopped
Mr.
watching it
Burns.
after Maggie shot Mr. Burns. Yeah, I think I probably stopped
Really?
watching then.
It went downhill
Um,
from there.
yeah, kind of more recently, what animations, what animators and what comics and animations have kind of been
Um,
inspiring to
I
you?
love like, it's not really a comic or a cartoon actually, but have you heard of Cuphead?
Oh yes, a
Yeah,
video
it's big,
game,
and
isn't
they're
it?
actually making it into a
Yeah.
Netflix series actually soon. But I love the style of that, and that's been really influential on my work. I think that's really great. Have you heard of Lisa Hannah Walt?
No, I've not. I'm not familiar with the animation.
She did all the designs for BoJack Horseman. So she's
Okay.
like, and she's got quite a few of her own little comic books as well. Actually, she's really cool. She also made Tuca and Bertie. I don't know if you've heard of that.
Yeah, I've
Yeah,
heard
so
of
I
that. Yeah.
really love like I find her work really inspiring as well. Just like everything's animals, so like I think that's great, and her colors are really nice. What else was it? Cartoons or comics?
I mean, I'm going to ask you about which comic books, if you read growing up as well. But yeah, if there's any other cartoons that you watch at the moment, or that you'd recommend, my listeners kind of checking out as well. That kind of out there that you think people should
I
be
do really
watching?
recommend season 1 of Tuca and Bertie. I think like the animation in that is flawless and it's so like fun and like creative and it's not like and it's on net I think yeah, season 1 is on Netflix and it's just like it feels really arty. It's just not something you'd usually see on Netflix. Like it's really nice to watch. I really recommend Over the Garden Wall. That's kind of got real influences of Disney in it, which is just really nice. I love things that kind of have that kind of old 1930s almost influence on them. My brain's gone blank. I do just end up rewatching like a lot of old SpongeBob and Simpsons a lot.
Well, I mean, that's kind of what I did a lot during lockdown. I just go on YouTube and watch clips of Avatar:
Yeah.
Legend of the Aang, Avatar: Legend of Aang. Let me start trying to say that again. Avatar: Legend of Aang, The Wire, Star
Mm,
Trek, and kind of like clips from Red Letter Media. I just watch those over and
yeah.
over again for like hours on YouTube, not doing anything productive at all during the middle of lockdown. Let's talk a little bit about comic books. So, did you read many comic books while you were
I mean, I
growing up?
always loved like the old Beanos. I've got some retro Beanos in my room. My dog was called Nasher, so like I loved that a lot. What else? I mean, yeah, mainly Peanuts and Beano. Really, I suppose the main comics that I actually grew up reading. I like graphic novels now, which I suppose is like the same thing. I read like The Black Hole like a while ago.
I've not heard of that. What's that?
It's
What's
quite
that
like,
about?
I don't know if it's quite a famous graphic novel, I thought it was, but, I read that and that was amazing. It's about, it's like virus that goes around and it's like I can't remember exactly because I did read it a couple of years ago, but I just remember, like, loving it. What was it about?
Oh, it's Charles Burns. Oh yeah, I have
Yeah,
read
I
that.
loved that. I thought that was,
Yeah,
like it was just a really powerful, like, way to get a story through, like, it was, like, shocking as well, and you turn the page and be like, like, it was almost like a horror film in a book. I thought that was really great. What other comics do I like? I actually bought a load of Adventure Time comics, I love them. They're
they're
really good,
really good. Those ones, they're
and at the
really
back,
good.
they've got, like, loads of different styles of illustration as well, which I really always really liked as well, so, yeah, I've got quite a lot of those.
I think it must be quite interesting for who created Adventure Time. It was
Ward?
Pendleton, yeah, Pendleton Ward. How he's had to kind of step away from it and kind of like give the reins over to other creators to kind of finish the story and take the story off in other kind of like direction. I think that must be quite a scary thing to do,
Yeah,
really.
yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's funny because I think he did the voice of Lumpy Space Princess as well, which is brilliant.
Yeah, one of my favorite
Same.
characters. Um, Lumpy Space Princess. Um, what have you been reading? Any kind of like interesting books recently? Do you read a lot, or is it do you more kind of like watch cartoons and
Yeah,
things of that
mainly
nature?
like I do mainly watch cartoons to be honest. Like I like to have like kind of happy, chilled escapism, which obviously there's lots of dark books, there's lots of dark shows. So I kind of do like I like returning to my like childhood cartoons because they like bring me comfort, I suppose. I would like to read more for sure though. I think the
Yeah.
last book I read was probably In Cold Blood, which is quite dark actually by Capote.
Yes. Yeah. That is. It's
I loved
definitely
it though.
quite.
I loved
It's
it,
quite
but
dark.
yeah, like I have to be in the right mental space to read like a book, I think. Actually, I'm reading The Jungle Book at the moment. I forgot about that. I bought this like really beautifully illustrated version of it, so it's kind of got all these like pop outs. I don't think it's for children, but it's got all these pop outs and
Yeah.
like cool stuff in it. So I'm reading The Jungle Book at the moment.
The Jungle Book has been adapted so many times. It's kind of really interesting why it appeals to like so many different
Yeah.
generations. Yeah, so I just wanted to talk about kind of long form versus short form kind of animation. So, eh, do you have a preference for working on one as opposed to the other?
I like just kind of I have like a lot of silly ideas in my head for like little gifs. I mean, if you go on my website, it's mainly just like an Instagram. It's mainly just silly gifs of frogs running or people dancing or something. But, I've got loads of ideas for, like, films in my head that, like, I have kind of started, but then, like, freelance work will kind of take priority over that. But I do really wanna make, like, short films. That's my goal because 'cause I'd love to get into, like, film festivals. There's one in Berlin that I really wanna go to, which I can't remember the name of now. Yeah, I definitely wanna go into more long form animation. It just takes a lot more work
Yeah,
and more
whenever you're
patience, I
doing
suppose, which is
filmmaking kind of things around budget and getting the right collaborators on board, and it's just like
yeah.
it's so difficult. It's so difficult to kind of like get done, especially if you're working around trying to pay the bills as well. And I suppose it must be different for
Yeah.
making animated short films, because when I've spoken to other filmmakers in the past, they've always mentioned, well, yeah, my mate's a sound recordist. He's coming down on Saturday to kind of like do me a favor and recording it for free, and I've got a couple of jobbing actors that are prepared to work for free. I don't imagine that'd be the same thing with animators. Can you come up and do a bit of cleanup on this? I don't think it would be quite a big ask. I think
It would be, yeah. I kind of expect to do it all myself, actually. I didn't even think, it didn't even occur to me to get other people to help, but that would be nice. But yeah, it is a big ask when it comes to animation, for sure.
What does success look like for you?
Ideally, I'd like to have my own like production studio, making like illustrations, animations, maybe short films or music videos, like that sort of thing would be great. Or like my other ideal dream is like just to have my own, like make my own kids TV show. I'd love that. So either one, I'll be happy. Both great. I definitely want to continue, yeah, with animation and
What
illustration
are
for
you
sure.
going to be doing next?
With kind of freelance, I don't know, things can come in so last minute. Like literally, like someone be like, "Oh, can you start this week? Can you start tomorrow?" So like, I've got a couple of things in the pipeline, but nothing else has been confirmed at the moment. I'm working with Sage until January, so like, I've actually got a bit of stability at the moment. But I'm going to try do my own personal projects on the side of that because I still have time.
And is there any hints that you can drop of what the projects, your personal projects, going to be?
I mean, I've got a film idea which I've kind of started working on about a girl. I kind of came up with it in lockdown, of this girl who escapes into her. She builds a terrarium and then she escapes into it and like lives in her terrarium. You know those big plant
Yeah.
bottle things. If you didn't know what it was, yeah. Like so, I started working on that, and I'm quite excited by that. And it's something I wanted to do in lockdown as well because I have a big terrarium, and I thought I wish I was in there. So it's kind of autobiographical in a way, but that's something in the pipeline that I'd really want to get done, ideally before the end of the year, but hopefully before the end of 2022 at
Yeah.
least.
Is there anything that I didn't ask that I should have?
I don't know because I've never done a podcast before, so no, I don't think. I feel like no, I think you're good.
Okay, great. So this is my first time actually talking to an animator. So next time I do it, you're kind of like the trial run. So next time I talk to an animator, I'll have a better idea of what I'm doing, as well.
Sure.
So yeah, my last question to you is basically, where can my listeners find you on the internet, social media, and all that good stuff?
Oh, well, my Instagram is at Maddy Hope Draws, MADDYHOPE Draws. And my website is maddyhope.co.uk if you want to check out the sort of weird stuff I do.
Yeah, that's actually all right. One more question. How so that when you look at when I see a lot of animation work, there is more than perhaps any other art form that I've seen, is kind of like there is like this portal to weirdness with animation. Is that something that you've noticed as well?
Yeah, because it's kind of the only platform where you can, well, unless you've got a really high budget to make films, like it's just like kind of almost a simple way to just create things that can never happen in real life. Like real life can be quite boring and sad, whereas you can just make bizarre things happen in cartoons, like frogs. Well, actually, I don't know if frogs run. They might do. That's a really bad example, but you can just make like the most crazy things happen. I recently worked with Sasha Beeley, and her film was all about these dancing pubes. It's for Venus Gillette, and you can just like give pubes a voice and a dancing routine, and it's just bizarre, and that's what I love about it. Just like kind of creating a reality that's so much more exciting and different from our own.
And I think that's a fantastic point to end on. So thank you, Maddy, for taking the time to speak to me today. For our listeners, please follow us on social media at See Through Panel. I think it's See Through Panel Podcast. I should probably have this memorized by now. Please rate and review the podcast wherever you're listening to it on. We've got a lot more of these interviews coming up, and we're going to be starting doing reviews again soon as well. And please donate via the link in the episode description. Thank you, Maddy. Let's say bye to the listeners. Bye.
Bye.